It's January 2026, and millions of Americans have simply stopped paying rent on purpose. Not because they're unemployed, not because they're irresponsible, but because the entire financial system has collapsed under their feet. Right now, over 8.7 million renters are behind on payments, and nearly 40% of them say they have no intention of ever paying it back. Let that sink in. This isn't a housing crisis anymore. This is a nationwide economic rebellion. Since mid-2024, late rent payments have jumped over 24%. Eviction courts in major cities are so backed up, some tenants are living rent-free for 6 to 8 months with zero consequences. This is how the middle class dies. Quietly, month by month, rent unpaid, hope gone. If you're still paying rent on time, you're one of the few left playing by rules that everyone else has already abandoned. Let me show you exactly how we got here, and why 2026 is the year the system finally breaks. For millions, rent has turned into a suggestion, not a requirement. Now here's the part that's really going to blow your mind. It's not just that people can't pay rent, it's that a growing number of Americans are choosing not to. And not out of laziness or some moral failing like the mainstream media wants you to believe. No, it's because the numbers simply don't work anymore. According to the latest data from the National Equity Atlas, over 8.5 million people in the U.S. were behind on rent as of Q4 2025, with 35% of them behind by more than 3 months. And here's where it gets crazier. Out of those millions, more than half said they had no intention of paying unless they were forced to by legal action. That's not apathy, that's economic protest. That's financial triage. People are looking at their bank accounts, looking at the cost of food, utilities, gas, credit card bills, and rent is the thing that doesn't make the cut. And why would it? When eviction moratoriums stretched for nearly 2 years during the pandemic, that flipped a psychological switch. It taught tenants that if push comes to shove, skipping a payment doesn't mean instant homelessness. And now, in this post-pandemic inflation spiral, that lesson is sticking. We've entered what I'd call the quiet strike era, where people haven't hit the streets with picket signs, but they're absolutely rebelling with their wallets. And it's hitting landlords hard. Smaller landlords, especially the ones who depend on just 1 or 2 rental units to fund their retirement, they're getting wiped out. In fact, recent data from Avail shows that 20% of small landlords have sold at least 1 property since 2023, and 13% are planning to exit the market completely in 2026. Why? Because rent collection is becoming a game of roulette. You don't know if you'll get paid, or if your tenant is part of the 22% of Americans who now say they don't fear eviction anymore. And that's not just a statistic, that's a cultural shift. A generation ago, skipping rent would give someone a panic attack. Today, it's just another line item you push to next month. And if it catches up, well, deal with it then. That's the survival mindset we're in now. Gen Z and millennials have checked out of the rent game entirely. You want to talk about real change? Let's talk generational attitudes toward rent. Because Gen Z and millennials, the 2 generations that make up nearly 54% of all renters in America, are increasingly done with the entire concept. I'm not exaggerating here. According to a survey by Freddie Mac from October 2025, 47% of millennials and 62% of Gen Z renters now believe that paying rent long-term is a waste of money and would rather crash on a friend's couch, live in a van, or even go back home with their parents than throw $2,000 a month into a black hole. And you know what? They've got a point. Wages haven't just stagnated, they've shrunk in real terms. Median rent in the U.S. is now $1,740 a month, while the median household income for renters is only $47,000 a year. That's nearly 45% of their income going just to keep a roof over their head, and that's before food, utilities, car payments, and student loans. And you wonder why they're just done. You want to hear something even more staggering? More than 1 in 4 renters under the age of 35 have either missed a rent payment in the last year or deliberately paid it late to free up cash for survival. And when asked about eviction fears, 34% said they'd rather take the risk than go broke trying to keep up. That's not irresponsibility. That's a clear sign of economic collapse at the micro level. It's millions of people doing the math and realizing that the game is rigged, so they're just opting out. And they're not quiet about it either. Social media is now flooded with influencers openly bragging about rent hacking, turning off auto pay, delaying landlord responses, living with 5 roommates, or even subletting illegally just to stay afloat. It's become a weird badge of honor. And if you're a landlord, good luck managing that. You're up against a generation that doesn't see you as a business partner. They see you as an enemy in a system they didn't build, can't win, and don't care to play anymore. Now, if you think tenants are the only ones stressed, think again. Because the landlord side of this mess is turning into a full-blown financial disaster. Let me hit you with a number that should terrify anyone holding investment property right now. The average cost to maintain a rental unit has jumped over 22% since early 2023, according to the National Apartment Association. And that's not even counting property taxes, which in places like Texas and Florida have spiked by as much as 40% in just the last 2 years. Meanwhile, rent collection rates have plummeted. We're talking a national average of 83% rent, collected on time that's down from 94% pre-pandemic. Do you know what it means to lose 17% of your expected revenue every single month in a business with razor-thin margins? It means you're bleeding money and the bleeding isn't stopping. And here's where it gets worse. The majority of America's rental properties, about 22 million units, are not owned by big Wall Street-backed corporations. They're owned by mom-and-pop landlords, people like retired couples, middle-class workers who bought a duplex to supplement income, and those are the exact people getting crushed right now. These aren't billionaires with REIT portfolios, they're everyday folks trying to survive, and they're the ones losing their shirts. Many are stuck between a rock and a hard place. If they evict a non-paying tenant, they risk paying thousands in legal fees and losing several more months of rent during the process. But if they don't, they're covering the mortgage and expenses out of pocket. It's a trap, and banks are noticing. According to CoreLogic, delinquency rates on investor mortgages have more than doubled in 2025 alone. That's a sign that landlords are giving up walking away from their rentals because the numbers just don't work anymore. And you know what comes next? Fire sales, distressed properties, crashing real estate values in cities where rental chaos is reaching critical mass. We're not just watching a tenant crisis, we're watching the early stages of a rental market collapse that could echo all the way back to the housing crash of 2008. And nobody's talking about it. Yet. You know what's wild? In most major cities, the entire eviction system is so backlogged and underfunded that it's basically non-functional. And tenants know it. In fact, many are counting on it. Look in places like Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, and parts of Chicago. The average eviction process now takes between 3 to 6 months, sometimes longer if the tenant knows how to game the system. That means even if you stop paying rent today, chances are you'll be sitting on that couch for the better part of half a year for free. And don't think people aren't talking about this. TikTok is flooded with tutorials, like full-on step-by-step guides on how to delay eviction proceedings, how to request extensions, demand jury trials, use legal aid loopholes, even how to file bogus repair complaints to drag out hearings. This is all real, all out in the open, and it's created a kind of renter insurgency, where not only are people falling behind, but they're weaponizing the law to stay put. And the landlords? They're stuck. Because here's the dirty little secret. Courts are overwhelmed, sheriff departments are understaffed, and in some places like Portland or San Francisco, eviction enforcement is borderline political suicide. There are counties where judges will do everything they can to avoid signing off on evictions, especially for families, elderly tenants, or low-income renters. Some cities have even added mandatory mediation or right-to-counsel requirements before an eviction can proceed, adding months to the process. So let's be brutally honest, eviction, once feared like the plague, has become a paper tiger. It's a slow-moving, understaffed, bureaucratic disaster that no longer strikes fear into tenants because they know the landlord has to jump through burning hoops just to get them out. And when the average American is $10,000 in credit card debt, drowning in car payments, and watching grocery prices soar 21% since 2021, it's no wonder rent is the bill that gets pushed aside. Because if the system isn't going to enforce it quickly, why rush to pay it? Rent prices are falling in some cities, but tenants still can't pay. You want to hear something that sounds totally backward? Rent prices are dropping in dozens of US cities right now, and tenants still can't afford to pay. That should tell you everything you need to know about where this country's headed. According to the latest data from Zumper and Apartment List, as of December 2025, cities like Austin, Phoenix, Tampa, Minneapolis, and even parts of Las Vegas have seen rent prices fall between 4% and 12% year over year. That's supposed to be a win for tenants, right? Lower rent means relief, right? Not so fast. Because what's really happening here is terrifying. Rents are dropping because landlords are desperate to fill vacancies, not because people suddenly have more money. The reality is that Americans are poorer than they've been in years. Real wages, meaning inflation-adjusted pay, have declined for 8 consecutive quarters, and the average full-time worker is now making less in buying power than they were in 2019. You see the disconnect? Rent went down by $100, but your grocery bill went up $300. Your car insurance is up 40% since 2022. Your health premiums are a joke. And energy bills? In some states like California and New York, monthly utility costs are now breaking $500 per household during the winter. So when landlords brag about slashing rents by 5%, they don't realize they're offering a discount no one can afford. And let's not forget, over 43 million Americans are saddled with student loan debt again after the payment pause ended in late 2023. Many of them are now coughing up $400 to $800 a month with zero flexibility, zero forgiveness, and zero chance of paying it off early. So what happens when your rent drops from $2,000 to $1,875, but your car insurance, groceries, student loan, and energy costs went up by a combined $800? You still can't pay. And people aren't stupid. They're done pretending everything's fine. They're cutting corners, skipping rent, and just hoping their landlord is too broke or too tired to chase them. And in many cases, they're right. Credit scores are getting torched, but tenants don't care anymore. People are wrecking their credit scores on purpose, and they literally don't care. Let that sink in. What used to be a financial death sentence, a plummeting FICO score, is now just another sacrifice on the altar of survival. And this isn't some fringe thing. According to Experian's latest data, as of Q3 2025, average credit scores among renters have fallen by 21 points year over year, the sharpest drop since 2008. Why? Because people have stopped paying everything: rent, credit cards, medical bills, even auto loans. The mindset now is, I'll deal with it later, I need to eat today. And here's the kicker. People know they're nuking their credit, and they're doing it anyway. Because what does good credit get you in an economy like this? Higher interest rates? Declined loan applications? People see the writing on the wall even with good credit. It's not like banks are handing out 2% mortgages anymore. Most tenants can't afford to buy a house regardless of their score. So why bother protecting it? And landlords? They're still trying to use credit checks like it's 2015 as if they mean something. But when 40% of all Gen Z renters now have credit scores under 620, the landlord has to choose between renting to someone with a bad score or not renting at all. It's creating this bizarre situation where the entire system is pretending to function like it used to. But under the hood, it's falling apart. And now that rental debt isn't always reported to credit bureaus unless it goes to collections, many tenants are playing the game like pros. Pay late, maybe get a call, stall the landlord, move out before eviction, rinse, repeat. It's happening all across the country, and no one's talking about it in the mainstream. Why? Because it's embarrassing. We're supposed to be the richest country in the world, but millions of Americans are playing financial musical chairs just to stay indoors. And the crazy part is, for many people, it's working. Rent is no longer a priority, because survival has a new hierarchy now. What used to be the number one non-negotiable bill, rent, has now been shoved down to third, fourth, or even fifth place on the survival to-do list for millions of Americans. Think about that. We've officially entered an era where people are more worried about their cell phone bill, their gas tank, and keeping their kids fed than whether or not their landlord is going to send a nasty notice. This isn't just anecdotal, it's backed by data. According to a 2025 survey from the Urban Institute, only 27% of renters said rent was their top financial priority, down from 52% just 5 years ago. What changed? Everything. People have adapted to the new rules of a broken economy. The average American has learned that skipping rent doesn't mean immediate consequences anymore. You're not out on the street the next day. In many cases, You're not even out the next month. So why stress about it when groceries are up 24% since 2021, when eggs are over $5 a dozen in many areas, and when childcare now costs more than college tuition in half the states? This is what people are actually up against. You've got working parents skipping meals so their kids can eat. You've got seniors choosing between rent and their medications. And now, with nearly 1 in 4 Americans living paycheck to paycheck with zero savings, you better believe that rent is starting to look like a luxury bill. And it's not just poor people, this is happening to the middle class too. Teachers, nurses, retail managers, people who used to live comfortably are now behind on rent and not losing sleep over it. They've realized there's a new hierarchy of bills. 1, food. 2, electricity. 3, transportation. 4, insurance. Then maybe rent. And that shift? It's psychological, not just financial. It's a cultural reordering of what matters. And once that line gets crossed, once rent is no longer sacred, it becomes just another item on the chopping block. It's not even about bad intentions. It's about raw, cold math. When the numbers don't work, something's got to give. And rent is giving way in a massive nationwide collapse of financial priority. America's rental market is turning into a massive game of musical chairs. Let me tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. We're witnessing the rise of a brand new survival strategy, and it's spreading like wildfire. Serial renting. And no, I'm not talking about people renting out multiple properties. I'm talking about regular folks, everyday Americans jumping from lease to lease, city to city, sometimes even state to state, in a frantic game of musical chairs designed to delay the inevitable crash. This is the shadow economy of the rental world, and it's being driven by people who figured out one dirty little truth. If you leave before the landlord can evict you, they can't touch you. It's that simple. You skip rent for 3 months, wait for the court summons, and right before the eviction hearing, you pack up and vanish. New town, new lease, maybe sublet from someone off Craigslist, maybe crash with friends for a few weeks, maybe rent under someone else's name. And the crazy part? It works. According to a recent Redfin study, tenant turnover has jumped 33% year over year in lower income zip codes, while eviction filings are rising in nearly every major city. But the number of completed evictions? Still relatively flat. Why? Because people aren't waiting around to get kicked out. They're bouncing proactively. And they're doing it faster than landlords can chase them. There's even Reddit forums and Telegram groups now where people share tips on how to rotate through leases, how to find landlords who don't run background checks, how to stay one step ahead of the legal process. I mean, this is organized now, and it's turning the rental market into a chaotic free-for-all. The damage this is doing to landlords is catastrophic, especially the small-time investors. One unpaid tenant can wipe out an entire year of cash flow, and if that same unit stays vacant for months afterward, game over. It's no wonder that 15% of mom-and-pop landlords in 2025 defaulted on their rental mortgages, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association. And on the tenant side? Sure, this isn't a long-term solution. But it's a temporary hack, a survival mechanism in a system where dignity costs more than rent. You want to talk about economic despair? That's what this is. This isn't laziness. This isn't entitlement. This is what happens when an entire generation gets locked out of stability, so they start running, and no one's figured out how to stop it. Renters know the system is rigged, so they've stopped playing fair. People have stopped paying rent because they finally understand something landlords, banks, and even the government hoped they'd never figure out. The entire housing system is built on fiction. Fictional values, fictional wages, fictional promises of owning the American dream. And once you realize the game is rigged, playing fair becomes optional. Think about it. We're told to work hard, pay rent on time, keep your credit score high, save up for a down payment, but for what? So you can maybe qualify for a $500,000 mortgage on a starter home that's falling apart with a 7% interest rate just to hand over half your income to a bank for the next 30 years? That's not freedom. That's debt servitude. And renters are waking up to that. They're done pretending. According to a 2025 Pew Research report, nearly 60% of renters under 40 no longer believe homeownership is achievable in their lifetime, and 44% say they no longer believe it's worth pursuing at all. And when you take away hope, What's left is raw pragmatism. People are no longer ashamed of defaulting. They're strategic about it. Renters are skipping payments not because they're lazy or irresponsible, but because they've done the math. Because they've realized that paying rent doesn't earn you security anymore. It earns you nothing. You pay rent for 12 months, you have no equity, no protections, and in many cases, no rights. So if skipping 3 payments buys you groceries for 6 months, if bailing on a lease lets you pay off your car, if tanking your credit score saves your family from living in their car, people will make that trade every time. And the icing on the cake? The government has no plan for any of this. HUD is underfunded. Emergency rental assistance programs are a joke. And the so-called affordable housing being built? It's being snatched up by corporations before working-class families ever get a chance. BlackRock owns entire neighborhoods. Zillow's trying to become a landlord. And renters? They've seen enough. They know no one's coming to save them. So they've stopped playing by the rules, and they don't care who gets mad about it. America's rent crisis isn't a blip. It's the collapse of a core pillar of society. We're not in a rent crisis. We're in a rent collapse. What we're witnessing right now, millions of Americans behind on payments, ghosting landlords, ignoring credit damage, bouncing from lease to lease, this isn't a phase. It's a structural breakdown of one of the most fundamental pillars of American life, the right to secure housing in exchange for honest work. That deal is dead. And here's how you know. Over the past decade, wages have grown just 32%, while average rents in America have ballooned by over 76%, according to U.S. Census and Zillow data. And that's before you account for utilities, fees, and pet rent. Yes, that's a real thing now. Median asking rent in the U.S. is now $1,740 per month, while over 65% of renters make less than $50,000 a year. That means tens of millions of people are paying 40%, 50%, even 60% of their income just to stay housed. That's not sustainable. That's a slow-motion catastrophe. And it's spreading. The National Low-Income Housing Coalition reported that the U.S. is now short more than 7.3 million affordable rental homes, a number that's only increased since the pandemic. Meanwhile, corporate landlords are raking in record profits. Invitation Homes, one of the biggest single-family rental giants in the country, made $1.9 billion in revenue in 2024 alone. While tenants are choosing between insulin and electricity, billion-dollar firms are sending out automated late fees and raising rents by 10% due to market trends. And here's the most chilling part. Renters aren't just financially tapped out, they're emotionally done. The social contract has been shredded. And when that happens, society starts to fray. Crime rises, mental health declines, trust vanishes, people disengage from civic life, and once enough people start to believe that paying rent is just lighting money on fire, the whole foundation begins to crumble. The banks lose their guarantees, cities lose their tax base, landlords lose their tenants, and families, they lose their faith in the system. That's where we are now. This isn't just an economic crisis, it's a spiritual one. And millions of Americans, they've already checked out. This isn't just about rent. This is about a collapsing system where working people are finally saying enough. They've stopped paying not because they're reckless, but because they're done being bled dry by a game they never had a chance of winning. So if you're behind on rent, you're not alone. You're part of a growing majority that's waking up to the truth. The system is rigged, the safety nets are gone, and survival means rewriting the rules. And if you're still hanging on, still scraping together every last dollar to pay your landlord, you need to ask yourself, for how much longer can you keep playing fair in a game that isn't? Let me know in the comments, are you paying rent? Are your friends? Have you seen this shift where you live? Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who thinks this is just a you problem, because it's not. It's all of us. And if this is what 2026 looks like in January, you're going to want to be here for what's coming next.